So watching Morning Live. Now, the Department of Basic Education has announced that a staggered calendar will be followed in school opening dates for 2022. This as the 2022 academic year is expected to start next week with pupils in the inland provinces of Gauteng, Free State, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, as well as the Northwest, going back to school on Wednesday, the 12th of January, and those in coastal provinces reopening on the 9th of January. Now, to tell us more about schools' readiness for the 2022 academic year, we're joined on Zoom by Basic Education Spokesperson Mhlanga. Elijah, a very good morning to you. How would you rate our school readiness for reopening next week? Are our schools ready to kickstart the 2022 academic year?
Good morning, Lebu. Yes, we are ready. In fact, the State of Readiness report was compiled and presented late last year, in preparation for this year, and we believe that it's all systems go. I think what is of utmost importance for us is curriculum coverage. Remember that in 2021, school reopening was postponed until February because of COVID cases. But this time, we believe that we'll be able to start in time and be able to cover the entire work that's in the curriculum schedule for this year.
Mm-hmm. What reports are you receiving from schools about their readiness to reopen next week?
Well, logistics are in place. COVID essentials in terms of sanitizers and other things, all of that is in place. What is usually the challenge at this time is unplaced learners, but also those learners who are going to be requesting admission for the first time without prior application due to changes maybe in family circumstances and other reasons. So that's usually the challenge, because you might have a majority of your learners in class and be ready to start, but while others are still at the office waiting to be processed into the school, you are not going to be able to succeed. So that's usually the challenge. But in terms of the delivery of material, textbooks, stationery, and all these things, it's already in place. And of course, the school nutrition program preparations are in place. So we are ready. We just need to do a final check for this year. That's why we always require school principals to go in first to check if indeed everything is in place.
Speaking of unplaced learners, what are the numbers coming from the different provinces?
Well, the Western Cape and the Gauteng are the two provinces that always experience the biggest challenges when it comes to placement. But as of late last year, Gauteng did say that they placed almost all of them, but we know that there are still challenges in that regard. Some of them have not been placed as yet. The exact figures are with the province. We believe that next week we'll get to know exactly what is happening. But what has been the challenge is that at the beginning of every year, you have something like 20,000 or 30,000 new children who come without having applied before. And that creates a problem in the system, and the provinces are not able to handle that. So that is generally the problem. It's not that the systems are not working. The systems are working. The admission process starts much earlier in the year to make sure that parents have enough time to gather the documents that are required and for their children to be placed. But of course, some parents, as we know, that they decline the schools that are offered to them, particularly in Gauteng, where you have a huge challenge when it comes to space. But those things, we are always able to resolve them, and we believe the provinces, they have the right capacity to be able to place all the children, because we can't leave some children out of school when we're actually supposed to be accommodating them.
And how do you avoid those kind of glitches going forward? We've been doing this online application for over a year now, and how do you avoid them going forward?
Well, it's more education and awareness about how it works, because people are frustrated, some wait till late. What we find is that the province, Gauteng in particular, they always report that once the system opens and positions in certain schools are offered to parents, many parents do nothing. They neither decline or accept those offers that are given to them. And that clogs the system, and they can't move because people are not communicating. So we really need to work hard to try and understand how the system works, particularly in the provinces that are experiencing the biggest challenges. But in other provinces, in the majority of provinces, admission goes on smoothly, except in the towns because all the towns in every part of the country, there's huge demand for space. So we need to work together, like already now in January, think about where your child is going to be enrolled in 2023 so that you begin the communication with that school. But you also go to the district office, find out what requirements there are, what you need to do for you to ensure that your child gets into a school without challenges. So we really need to play our part actively. So don't wait for that year. Start much earlier and try avoid some of the challenges that result in frustrations.
The plan for 2022, take us through that. Are we going to see some sort of normality for scholars?
Well, that's what we are hoping for. That's what we're hoping for because the numbers have dropped. And from last year already, the intention was always to have all our children back in school. Remember that the minister announced that from the 2nd of August 2021, primary school children were to go back, and the majority of them went back. And we had already obtained approval from the NCCC to return even high schools, but we needed to pause and consider the circumstances as they are brought about by COVID-19 to see, is it really the right thing to do? So we've had to wait on that one. But as of now, we hope that there will be some kind of announcement. But as things stand right now, it's still going to be rotation. But we are engaging the relevant authorities who are going to guide us. As we know, that is the Department of Health in this instance who are leading us in terms of managing COVID. But we are hoping that there will be good news in terms of returning our schools to normalcy because we've lost a lot of time already in the past 2 years of extraordinary teaching and learning. So we expect that 2022 will be slightly different as we gradually return the system to its previous setup where all kids were in school at the same time. But of course, we are mindful of the fact that COVID-19 is still here. And the most important point, by the way, is the fact that we need as many of our people to get their vaccination because that is going to help us to stabilize the system. But we're happy that the majority of our staff and educators already got their jabs, but now we're focusing on the learners. Remember that 12 to 17-year-olds and above can actually go get their jabs. At the last count, about 1 million had already done so, but we've got 12 million kids in the system. So we expect that there will be some movement in that regard to help us stabilize the sector so we can go back to normal.
What is the department doing to encourage vaccination?
Well, we are doing a lot. We're doing a lot. Last year with our teachers, we worked with our teacher unions, and they all came on board and they helped us to run communication and advocacy campaigns to make sure that everyone goes out. And that worked wonders because by the time we finished by July 15, we had over 93% of our personnel in the basic education sector having received their jabs. And the number continued to increase thereafter. So we are just under 100%, but we know that a lot of them have gotten their vaccination. So now the attention is really on our learners. But in this instance, we are going to work with parents because we need their consent, we need their support, we need their participation in making sure that they also talk to their children and encourage them to take the vaccine. So we'll be meeting with the Department of Health to agree on the approach on how the vaccination program among our school-going young people is going to be rolled out.
Now, according to your department, learners in disadvantaged communities lost, a year's worth of learning due to a lack of teaching, contact time and rotational learning systems during the hard lockdown. What plans are in place should we find ourselves in a similar situation? And what are you going to do going forward?
Well, we have a 3-year recovery plan, which we think needs to be extended because a lot of damage has been caused by COVID. So now we are busy rolling that out. We have restructured the curriculum in terms of trimming it, but also revising our annual teaching plans. We continue to monitor coverage when it comes to curriculum, but we want schools to be back as normal because the only way you can ensure that you recover from the losses or make some progress in terms of curriculum coverage, you really need all the children back in school. Because when they are 1 week in and 1 week out and alternating over days in other places, it doesn't work. It causes disruptions that are very difficult to manage. So now the insistence is that we need everyone vaccinated so that we can have a certain degree of comfort that we can really go back to school, all of us, to make sure that teaching and learning happens as we used to know it before. Of course, masks will remain and sanitizers will remain, but at least if we can have all our people in the same place at the same time, we'll be able to teach. But we continue to monitor the impact of COVID-19, and the various strategies have been adopted. For example, for matrics, they don't close. For grade 7s, they don't alternate. They come to school all the time and make sure that they continue to learn, because we can be able to do that. And in other schools, they are able to have all their children at once, but it still creates inequalities. That's why we feel that we have a good case to make for all learners to go back. And also other stakeholders are supporting this particular move. So we will wait to see what's going to happen, but we are really worried about the continued rotational system.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any idea of the dropout rate since in the past 2 years?
Well, it's been up and down. You know, in 2020, most parents, well, not most, but some parents did not return their children back to school. In fact, in 2020, we recorded some 1.2 million, 1.4 million children who could not be accounted for. It does not mean they dropped out, but they could not be accounted for because, remember, in May, June 2020, we encouraged parents, due to fear, to enroll their children to home education so that they are comfortable that their children are safe. If you don't want your children to go to school because of the fear. Because back then, I mean, COVID was horrible. It was destroying lives and destroying families. So we understood when people were fearful. But the outcome of that was that many children could not be accounted for, or about 1 million or 1.2, somewhere there. But in 2021, the number dropped. We started talking about 500,000, which means more than half of those had come back to school and could be accounted for. So we expect that in 2022, the numbers will go down even further, and we'll have all our children back in school. But also let's remember that even collecting data about dropouts is very difficult in a system where you don't have all the kids at once. I mean, taking a register is very difficult. So some schools were not sure how to report because when a child has not come to school and they've missed their day, they'll be recorded as absent even when they were not supposed to be in school, for example. So we expect that this time our parents will work with us to return all their children. But we must say also that in August last year, we saw a huge enthusiasm from parents who returned, who actually encouraged their children to go back to school in August when the minister said primary school kids could go back. That happened. We expect that level of interest to come back again this time when we open schools, because that's what we need. We need to work together, hold hands, get each other's input, and get our system back on track again.
All right, Elijah, thank you so much for talking to us. Elijah Mhlanga is the spokesperson for basic education, speaking to us about the state of readiness for schools reopening. Inland schools are expected to open on the 12th of January, and then coastal schools